Hey everybody, welcome to Missing Links with John, Brock, and myself, Stephen King, where we discuss what's missing in Web3 architecture. For feedback, please go to missinglinks.fm, send us an email, give us some feedback on what we discuss and what you'd like us to cover next week. All right, let's get into it. Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Missing Links with John, Brock, Asaurus, and myself, Stephen. We got John back from Italy. John, you had a good trip?
Very good trip. Still slightly jet lagged, but used it to my advantage. Now I wake up when the cats try to wake me up. So, just knocking shit out throughout the day. So
Nice. And Brachiosaurus, we talk a couple times a day, so
we do.
You're still doing well?
I am, yeah.
Cool. All right, so we have a bit of a complex subject this week. At least it's complex for me, but good complex. It's called Swarm, and it's a storage layer that's being built for Ethereum by Victor Tron and team. And we've been following this since we saw Victor, I think, present it in Shanghai at DEF CON 2. I think that's when they announced it. And Brock, you actually got to meet him at DEF CON in Colombia, right?
Yep. Yeah, we talked for a little bit.
Cool. Yeah. Well, so let's dive right into it. I guess the $1 million question is, and we'll get to it, is what's the difference between IPFS and Swarm? And we were just talking about this, kind of having a bit of a debate. But John, why don't you just explain to us what is Swarm?
So Ethereum is decentralized CPU. Swarm is the decentralized storage. But I don't want to say they're one and the same, but there's a way that you can connect the two to where you can access storage within Swarm, within a contract on Swarm. Am I understanding that correct, Brock? So it's pretty much you're building that layer within the smart contract, within the ecosystem, whereas IPFS is completely outside of Ethereum. It's its own thing, but people just use it because it's another way of decentralizing data storage.
Yeah, I think ecosystem is the right word. Really like janky comparison, you could say that Swarm is the internal hard drive for Ethereum, and you can think of like IPFS or Filecoin as an external hard drive. So they both like serve a similar function, but it's how tightly coupled they are to the actual Ethereum ecosystem.
That's a great analogy. I like that. And was I wrong in saying earlier before we started to do a record that IPFS you're going to a single node and Swarm you're going to a swarm of nodes, or is IPFS you're going to multiple nodes as well?
So I think it's multiple. So it's
IPFS you can be doing.
I was going to say, I think for Swarm you're going to multiple nodes, but you could go to only one node. It's where the chunks are, because everything is kind of like an IPFS is a smaller chunk. So it depends on where the chunks are, is how I understand it.
Yeah, it's with Swarm, anytime you add data, it gets broken up into 4 kilobyte chunks, and then those chunks are decentralized. So more than likely, your data is not living on a single node. It's on multiple nodes. And the idea is that you as a user of the network don't have to care. It's just all out there and you can grab it whenever you want. And they have this methodology with Swarm where you can theoretically add data to the network without ever participating in hosting that data. IPFS, conversely, in order to add data to the network, you have to be running your own IPFS node. You host it first, and then other people can fetch it from you. So it's a little more like, it's a little more like Filecoin in that way, where it's incentivized storage on Swarm. The data is forced to be decentralized. It's out there.
What's the cost?
Wait. So explain that last sentence that you just said. So IPFS, you have to get it out into the network, you have to run a node. Is that what you said?
Or have access to a node?
More or less, yeah. Like IPFS works by a node first hosting the data. So it's could be your own computer, could be a gateway that you're paying for access to, but that specific node hosts the file first. You can't force it to be decentralized with IPFS. But because IPFS is peer-to-peer, if somebody else requests that same data, then it gets transferred and decentralized between the network of nodes to get to the end user.
So our greatest example here would be Tegula. When everything was populated with the MLSs, unless someone pulled it through, it was still centralized in a way. Whereas,
John, what's Tegula?
So Tegula was built by our team many years back, and the idea was that Tegula would be plugged into different MLSs and different the idea was different data sources and decentralized through a republisher this data and kind of using encryption keys as a form of validation, give access to different groups of people in the network this real estate data, and that's where we all came from. So Tegula is kind of just something we built, but the idea stands that underneath the hood with IPFS, to Brock's point, so you have to wait for someone to request it or pull it through. If it's not pulled through, then it's technically centralized in kind of a cloak of decentralization because it's still sitting there. So if that disappears, then you have the same problems as you only get the benefits of decentralization if it's requested and it's content that needs to be pulled through. Whereas with Swarm, you're incentivized to kind of spread it out.
Yeah, we talked about this before.
And there's less of a security risk with Swarm because you're not crossing over into. Sorry, Brock, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just going to say we talked about this before with like the virality concept. So if like you've got a video on IPFS and it's really viral, it's going to be heavily decentralized. If nobody wants to watch that video, it's probably fully centralized.
Interesting. And okay, so that makes sense. And obviously, so Swarm's being natively built on Ethereum, so you don't have to cross into another ecosystem, right?
Yeah, correct. So IPFS you can use pretty much anywhere you want. You can use on any chain for the most part. Swarm is purely for Ethereum. I don't know. Do the L2 support it?
I don't know what else.
Because it's built on top of the EVM, right?
It's not built on top of the EVM as far as I know. It's got the Swarm uses the dev P2P library, so that's what the Ethereum ecosystem uses to communicate between different network nodes. IPFS conversely uses the lib P2P, and so there's a strong tie there between Swarm and Ethereum because they're both using the same underlying like peer-to-peer messaging protocol. But I don't know if there's any like explicit ties to a layer 2 or not.
Is it they call it the BZZ protocol or the BZZ protocol? Is that how it?
I think that's the client.
Is that what that's the client? Okay.
I think so, yeah.
It's Swarm being like, yeah, they have fun with it. So the BZZ is the token that gets paid out. So that's their like incentive model.
How does that work?
And then the client, it's a little bit of a work in progress, I think. The idea is like by participating in the network, you get paid, but they're still figuring out the actual mechanics behind it.
Because I was going to say, how is that different than Filecoin at that point?
Yeah, from an end user perspective, they should fulfill similar goals. The big difference is like Filecoin runs their own blockchain. Swarm is built into Ethereum, so like the BZZ token is an ERC20 on Ethereum directly. So okay. You can then also participate in the broader Ethereum ecosystem with that. And Swarm also does things like they're natively embedded with ENS. So like if you want to resolve content, you can use an ENS name.
Interesting.
Go ahead, John.
I was going to say, so does the content get an ENS name, or does like a resolver like the CDN gets a unique name?
I don't know precisely how it works, but it's not that the content gets an ENS. It's that you can you can define the content field of an ENS record to resolve to something on Swarm.
I see.
So, Brock, I was racking your brain about their white paper a couple days ago, or maybe a week ago, and so they've got this idea of, it's a Web 2 idea, or maybe even Web 1, but basically this serverless architecture, or like a graph, right? And this graph or serverless, I was kind of curious, like, what does that mean? It means that like there's this if you're going to go query data on Swarm, that there's this kind of key, I guess you could say, this database above all the Swarm databases that helps you use that key to access data within the Swarm network. You explained it really well.
Yeah. So what you're referencing, the broader concept is a decentralized hash table, or DHT. So IPFS has kind of built their own. And then the Ethereum world has a chunk store, which is a more specific version. And that's what Swarm uses. And so roughly the way this works is when you add a file to Swarm, it gets broken down into 4 kilobyte chunks. Each one of those chunks gets a hash. Those hashes, you put, I think it's 128 of them back into another hash. And you keep doing that all the way up until you end up with just one hash. And so when you want to get data back out of Swarm, you say, here's my root hash. And the network knows how to break that down into the 128 hashes beneath it, and so on until you get to the 4 kilobytes of data. And so all along, you're using this decentralized hash table to know where each of the chunks or the next step lives.
And what does that help with? Latency?
I don't know that it helps with latency, but it helps with decentralization.
Well, theoretically, if it's looking up this hash tree, eventually some of it would already be cached. If something changes, then theoretically it should be faster, minus that next step that's changed, because it might not have that next step because it will have to go find it. So theoretically, it could speed it up. I don't know how it does those lookups under the hood to construct it.
Yeah, I don't know the details, but I know there's also this concept of neighborhoods in Swarm.
Okay.
So there's like a node will have a neighborhood of other nodes that it shares information with. And so in that way, I think that helps spread the data further and further.
Is that in the protocol itself, or do you get to choose as a node operator who your quote unquote neighborhood is?
As far as I know, it's part of the network itself.
So you have your Ethereum node. So the Swarm nodes run in parallel to that, right? Or is it built into the Ethereum node itself?
Totally separate.
Okay,
that's what I think it's just you would have to point it at some sort of Ethereum gateway.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay.
Logically, it would make sense. It would seem that if there was going to be a winner in this space, which there'd probably be multiple, right? But it seems like if I was going to develop, an app right now on Ethereum, I had a big storage component. It seems like I would want to build on Swarm, especially because they've been working with Tim and the team over at ENS since almost inception, if not inception, right? Wouldn't it make more sense to have sort of a native storage layer than bridge over into something like IPFS?
Yes and no.
That is definitely the selling point.
Yeah. Well, yes and no, but also you're betting that because it's so tightly coupled to the ecosystem, you're betting that the ecosystem will succeed. IPFS, you really don't need to.
It's Ethereum.
Right, and I work in it, but I think that's kind of the reason a lot of people like move away from Swarm, and IPFS is very easy to use, and I would argue it's a little more mature right now. And it's much easier just to throw stuff up there and pull things through. Whereas with Swarm, there's a lot of debug work, and it's still, I wouldn't say it's in its infant phase, but I have not seen that many projects where I can go onto remix.org and deploy a contract on Swarm and stuff. But if I'm ever like deploying content, I'm always putting on IPFS. Like that's just my default.
But is that because you started with IPFS and you know it? I'm just curious. I'm very curious about this part because I've been trying to spin up a Swarm node, and yeah, it's not a trivial exercise. Now, I tried to spin up an IPFS node, but this was a while ago, so things could be much easier today. I don't have a development background. I'm somewhat technical with these things, but I'm not writing code or anything like that. I'd be interested to get your opinion on that. Is one easier than the other, really, or do you know one better than the other?
That's a good question. Putting me a little bit on the spot. I've given Swarm a try, but this was back in 2018 in Prague. and it was a talk. It was really cool. I remember sitting in the back of the room watching the swarm talk, and I'm like, I'm going to give this a try. And I was hacking, and I'm like, I am very frustrated with this right now. For how much talent they have behind it, it needs some work, in my opinion. So I think it's twofold. Like, I'm comfortable with IPS because I've done it a lot, but it's because when I put them side by side in 2018, I was like, just easier to like to Brock's point, the end goal, the user's experience is the same. I would admit Swarm technically under the hood is more complicated and more cool, has a cool factor from a computer scientist perspective. But at the end of the day, it just needs to work. So that's kind of my take.
Brock, do you have an opinion on that?
Yeah,
You better have an opinion on that, and it better be the one I'm thinking.
no, but my impression on that is Swarm has better technicals under the hood, but they have a marketing issue. And so I think IPFS has captured the market share early on and has much broader saturation in the market, really strong developer docs. And also, IPFS is just dead simple. It's a simpler product, simpler protocol. I think a more apt comparison would be between Filecoin and Swarm. And in that scenario, for me, it'd be a toss-up because I don't think Filecoin's easy. They're just like both complicated.
Yeah.
I still don't even understand Filecoin, how their model works.
I don't even want to talk about Filecoin. It doesn't exist as far as I'm concerned, because IPFS is like, that's what I understand. But I agree with you in your marketing comment. From my experience, let's say this, from my experience, usually the more technical and the less at the marketing is usually going to be the winner, regardless in the long term, maybe not the short term. But as a user, when I have the ability to go and create an app and choose which storage layer without having to set up that infrastructure myself, I would choose Swarm, not because I am biased. I really like the project, but I would choose it because it's more decentralized. So if I'm putting stuff up there and I want redundancy, it seems like that's going to happen more on something like Swarm. Like, let's say we were going to put this on TikTok, right? We want this to go viral on TikTok. Well, if this video is going to go viral on TikTok, it's going to live on many different servers. And I don't know, maybe that's a bad example, but I would feel like I would want, there's the ability, like, we don't have a lot of traction right now with this. So if we put it on IPFS, it sits on one node. Whereas in Swarm, it's forced to be broken up, right? Am I saying that correctly?
Yes.
Though, just to quickly interject, they've made a desktop application that I've already downloaded, and they made it like ganache and truffle. So it's actually, they kudos to you guys for the facelift on the website. I'm just looking at it. There's my plug. I always have to give a plug per podcast.
No, but I think it is a marketing issue. I think IPFS was, Juan Bennett, he was, or however you say his name, he was pretty good about, I don't know. He marketed differently maybe, but John, I'd be interested after you try to stand up a node, what your opinion would be. And I'm not trying to push you towards Swarm. I'm curious about this because I like IPFS a lot. But I would just be interested to see, is it just a marketing issue, or is it that much more difficult, not just to stand up a node, but to actually use the service and get value out of it?
Yeah, that's a good point. That's kind of it's a weekend where I have nothing to do but relax. So I am going to hack. I'm hacking. So I'm definitely gonna do this, and maybe I could do a snippet recording afterwards and follow that up. But as of right now, it took me about 30 seconds to download the CLI, and it's setting up all the command line stuff right now. So this is a lot. I'll tell you my first impressions. It wasn't this easy back in 2018. I can tell you that up, because I was trying to build it from source, because that's how it was. So this is awesome. So yeah, right now, positive experience so far. Once I get into the nitty gritties and I can actually apply it to a smart contract locally, I'll let you know. But so far,
John sold.
Yeah, I'm a very easy person to please.
Why do you have to download Brew when you run a node?
For Swarm?
Well, for anything. Anytime I try to run a node, I have to have brew on my computer. What is brew?
So Brew is a package manager for Macs. It's like a nice flavor of a package manager instead of Mac ports, which is the equivalent of app. Is it apt-get sudo? Mac ports? Yeah,
No one uses that.
Mac ports is pretty much dead.
Yeah, no one uses that. There's a new decentralized version too now called T.
Really? For Macs? T package manager.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's the same team behind Homebrew.
Java, T, brew. I mean, come on. Like we know you guys drink coffee, but I mean, like, let's
it's
do
engineers.
you guys eat ice cream or I mean, is
I
there
don't
any
like
other
sugar.
any other thing we can play with?
It's engineers. What do you expect? They're either having coffee, alcohol, or smoking half the time.
Yeah, it's funny because we were just at DevCon and Brock and I were talking a little bit about this, but engineers party hard, man. People don't think that, but they get down and it's Brock was up until 3 a.m. dancing at a club in Colombia.
There you go. You might want to edit that part out.
John, I'll just say it's a good thing you weren't there. If I made it to that club and you were there too, I don't know what that night would have been like. It wouldn't have been productive.
Well, of course not.
All right.
We also would probably have had a little too much fun. Probably wouldn't have gone up that early in the morning and did like a 20-mile run. Sorry, Brock, 30-mile run. Wait, you're in Colombia, kilometers. 50-kilometer run.
Yeah, you did it straight uphill. It was crazy.
Oh, God. Can't believe you guys do it. I will fix any jagged car or vehicle contraption you have. Not getting me to run. I'll just drive alongside you like Rocky.
That's all I got with Swarm today. And if there's anything else you guys want to add, we can do it. I do want to go ahead.
Yeah, I was only going to say about Swarm that I feel like they're at an inflection point. Like seeing them at DevCon again, I think they're ready for mainstream adoption or pretty.
Yeah, I agree, and I think they're going to kill it. And I actually I've been buying the token because their market cap is like 20 million or 25 million, and after reading their white paper, I literally had to look up. I mean, I haven't even gone through it, but it's unlike anything I've ever read before, and I just think that the native component. I think Victor Tron is a genius, and I think that I just think that they've just been heads down and haven't had the marketing. I still don't know if they have the marketing, but that's an easy thing, easier thing than doing what they've done so far. Nothing against IPFS. I think they're great too, but I don't think they're as decentralized. Whereas I truly believe it's in Swarm's DNA just because of the people that have been involved with it.
Agreed.
So they do have a chain. Swarm has a chain explorer, it looks like.
John, GPT-3. So
the license?
No, the AI engine. I'm blown away, man. You got to play with some of this stuff, but it's some of the tools. It's like it happened overnight, and maybe that's just for me. I know it's been people have been playing around with the beta for 2 years, but now consumers can play around with it. There's some apps that have come out that can like literally almost build an app for you. We know about Dolly and the images. Yeah, that's cool. And the text, basically, Jarvis and things like that. Those are actually cool and helpful. Blockchain. All right, so we're going to just feed the whole entire Ethereum blockchain into GPT-3, and I want to hear your what would you do? Besides like GitHub's doing this like autocomplete, using AI, and it's a real thing now. I feel like it just kind of happened, right? So I'd be interested to see what your take is, or have you played around with any of these tools yet?
So I've played with an open model that Xcode had for using, and this is a very tailored design, taking a whole bunch of photo data from your library, and it would build a localized model that was accelerated with the Apple Silicon, but that was like a black box model. This So yeah, you could feed the chain in, but the big thing becomes building models. Any type of AI models, you have to train the model. You have supervised and unsupervised training, and those training models are determined based on labeling of data. So the question becomes, how are you labeling and training your model in a way that's not biasing it? Because at the end of the day, what are you going to ask it, or what are you expecting of a given input? And that's kind of the big thing here. If you have all this data, that's great. It's really rich, but it needs to be labeled somehow. About 80%, I would say even 90% of all AI models is pre-processing. 10% is just running the model and just letting it run. Most of it is just making sure.
Isn't that what OpenAI, aren't they providing that framework, right? So like I sent Brock this example of, I sent him 5 headlines, and
Okay.
with these 5 headlines, I gave it a rating of either positive or negative, right? Or neutral, sorry, 3. And this was through OpenAI. And so basically what OpenAI did was it took those headlines, it assessed it based, I imagine on a word basis, and it rated those words. So it had already done the work that you're talking about. But is that not part of the value add, in that they help you with? Because I agree with you. If I had to go through every single word in the English dictionary to make this come out as a positive or negative for these specific headlines, it makes no sense for me to do that unless I'm making a lot of money trading or something.
When you gave them the articles, did you just throw the articles at it, or did you say these are positive articles, these are bad articles? Did you do any?
I didn't define
You didn't
anything.
classify anything.
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would, a pre-trained model, especially with natural language natural language processing, which is like the backbone of autocorrect, Grammarly, any type of language. That's like, if you go to Grammarly and you write an email and it says, "Hey, you sound they won't say this, but you sound kind of harsh or blunt." That's because of the tone, and it uses a pre-trained model to determine those types of characteristics that it then uses to retrain itself. So yeah, those are like very, I don't want to say trivial, but they're very common examples that have a lot of back pre-trained data that they can use.
What's the value add then of using OpenAI? If let's just say we were going to do this, we have to basically tell this machine model, we have to define everything, right? Is that what you're saying?
Right, but the question then becomes, what would you ask the model? What are you asking the model?
Well, okay, so I'll give you an example. So trading crypto, I identify a whale's wallet, and with this wallet, I want to mimic their trade, and eventually I would like to front run their trade. Right? This is this is just an example. I'm not actually, somebody's going to end up doing this. In fact, I bet somebody's doing it right now.
So this actually goes to the indexing company. Actually, this is not an AI question. This is an indexing question. The first thing you need to do is get that historical data from the full chain of that wallet, turn it into a standardized, I won't say financial document, into a standardized data set. Then you just feed it straight into the model and it'll tell you trends. And, that's the thing. So you're not really feeding the chain, you're feeding an offset of the chain.
Well, what if I want to predict the moves of this wallet? Or Brock, you gave a really cool example with Uniswap, right?
Yeah, I don't know if it was really cool, but it was a really basic example where I was indexing all of the USDC versus wrapped Ethereum swaps from Uniswap. I pulled them down for last year, normalized it, ran it through a model to try to predict what like the price of Ethereum on Uniswap would be in the next block. I got pretty accurate.
And what were you using to make those predictions?
Yeah, that was all TensorFlow, like just ML libraries.
Okay.
So theoretically, you can do that same thing, but with the whale wallet.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, yeah. So the way that Brock, because I was wondering how we could use this at the indexing company, and Brock said, he explained it pretty well. I mean, he said it's what we're doing is more deterministic, and AI is better for predictions based on like history, historical or historical data.
Yep.
Okay. So
Exactly.
Well, that's where, like, for an indexing company, the idea was that we could like plug it in as like a post-indexing transformation almost. So it's, hey, here's like through indexing, we're getting a highly structured set of data that's already normalized. So it's just like ready to be fed into an ML model if we knew what we wanted it to do.
Or you don't even need to write that code. You just are the plugin. You're an extension that could go into a traditional model, a wrapper for TensorFlow. Boom.
Yeah, I mean, somebody should definitely buy us for like $100 million and take this thing to the next level.
We'll go past the moon. We'll go to Jupiter or Pluto. Is Pluto still a planet?
It depends on the day.
It's a dwarf planet.
That's fair enough.
Okay, cool. We'll wrap the episode there. Thank you guys. This was a good topic. And for those listening, please go to missinglinks.fm and shoot us an email. Give some feedback on Apple, and we'll see you next week.